So, Stephen D here on Pure 24/7 Radio. And once again, we're joined by Bob Goody from Rural Missions. Good morning, Bob.
Good morning, Stephen.
Always a pleasure to be joined by you. How are you doing today?
Yeah, doing good today. Thank you. Yeah, doing well. Part seven. This is exciting times.
Yeah, part seven. We've had quite a few different conversations about various different things, including last week, the hard truths of rural communities. But before we get into today's conversation, do you want to just sort of give us an overview of what Rural Missions is rather?
Yeah, of course. So, Rural Missions, we are an ecumenical charity that serves rural churches. So, we work with churches of any denomination basically to help them to think and be more missional. So we do that in a number of ways, all that come at no cost to the church. So we provide tailor-made consultation days, helping them to reassess what mission is and how they could take some small intentional steps to engage their community with the love of Jesus. We run network gatherings in person and online, so we can have that mutual support as we do mission together. And then we provide a whole load of resources and training in support of those. So everything we do, you can find out on ruralmissions.org.uk. And if you'd love us to come support you, we would love to do that. So get in touch.
Excellent. So that's what Rural Mission is. And here we are having this conversation as we have been doing for the past few weeks, talking about how churches in rural areas, rural communities can grow, can develop, can improve in any number of ways. And this week, where would you like to take us in that conversation?
So, not that long ago, I did a podcast with a guy called Richard Tiplady, and he conducted some research for the Church of England and was basically commissioned to do a rural mission review. Not of us, but rural missions generally, not the capital R&M like we are. And he was tasked to look at projects across the country and what it shows for rural areas, not just the big complicated strategies, but basically to get a bit of a fundamental view of how do we start? How do we get engaged with mission? And so I wonder whether that is where we start is how do we get started with what's in our hands to be more missional?
How to get started is a big question. Once you get going, there's sort of momentum, but that moment of how do we start? How do we get this going? How do we improve, grow, develop, and reach our communities in rural areas and in urban areas as well? The same things can be applied there. So I suppose the question is, how would you help someone to get started? What would be the first steps then?
So aside from booking us for one of our tailor-made consultations, which is a really good thing to do, we journey the whole church on how do we get inspired to be more missional. But I think I'd just love to share a few pointers on how I think we can get started, because I know across the last few weeks we've explored about shifting our mindset, and we've looked at what's the turning point for us in moving from sort of the maintenance mode and into mission. And so I just wanted to unpack that with a few helpful thoughts as to how we might get started. And so for me, number one is we need to start with what is realistic and achievable.
Mm.
And I know it sounds really simple, really straightforward, but sometimes we see this copied model and we go, we've got to do that. Recently talking about a whole variety of projects like Bubble Church and Messy Church and Forest Church and Tree Church and insert word here and church afterwards. And those models are great. They have a real place and a purpose for many communities. But sometimes when we just try and parachute something in and go, this is what we need to do, we're not starting with what is realistic and achievable. And so sometimes we need to just stop, look and go, what do we have? Who do we have? And what resources do we have? And that is always a good starting point.
A proper assessment, really, of what's going on, what you've got
Yeah.
available, and it's very easy to see what other people are doing, like things like Messy Church or insert then church. It's very easy to just see, okay, it's worked over there. Let's do it here before actually assessing whether you've got the resources. Obviously, that that's worked over there. That's great. That doesn't mean it's going to work for you. So, an assessment is really, really critical, isn't it?
Yeah, and sometimes as things start, we get a bit of a critical mass of people going, "Oh, something new is happening. We'll get engaged." But we all know the reality is, how do we make this operate 6 weeks down the line? And we don't always think that far ahead. So we need to start with what's realistic, what's achievable, because with rural mission, especially, the question isn't what is impressive, it's what's possible here.
Hmm.
And so I know I've shared story after story of people doing coffee mornings. So there was the three churches that we did a consultation with, all were doing a coffee morning at various times of the month. But they said, what's going to be better here and what's going to be the most possible is, why don't we do this together? Because then we can do it every week. And for them, that was achievable. That was realistic. As an individual church, they could never have managed it for themselves. And so sometimes we do need to take a real look at ourselves and go, what do we have? And could we use this to serve?
Yeah, I suppose part of it is what's sustainable. So what you could do today, right now, may be fine for now, but are you going to be able to maintain doing that on a weekly basis, monthly basis, whatever it may be, every single month or week? Are you going to be able to sustain it? And properly assessing whether you've got the resources will determine whether or not it is actually sustainable for you in the area that you're in.
Yeah. And sometimes things do change as well. So I know of a church that started a messy church in their rural community. They actually did it in the primary school that was next to the church. Started off really well. They made it realistic. It was achievable for them. But that was until they had more people come than they anticipated. And it became very quickly something that wasn't realistic for them. And so they had a real surge, but sadly had to say, we can't do it anymore. Now, the community rallied round because they'd seen the need was there and they wanted this to happen. Like, how many non-Christians do you go and meet that go, we need this to happen in the church, we need this to go? And so they were about to stop running this messy church after only 4 times. But then the community went, no, what's now achievable is that we can come and support you in doing this. And so the parents start to get involved, and actually they're seeing real fruit and real engagement more than they ever have done. So they started with what was realistic, but sometimes things grow beyond our control, and we might need to start to look to bring others into the journey too.
That's an interesting problem to come across. I mean, at one level, a good problem is growing beyond the ability of that church, but actually, it had grown in such a way that others were able to then grow and support, continue to help it grow and support. So that's an interesting one. That unique. It's quite. I suppose I say unique. Is that something that might happen more than once?
I think it does happen. Like, I do know of churches where they're running coffee mornings and there are half congregation members and half community that serve at it. Even in my own church, I know people from our community serve in our cafe, they serve in our food bank that we run, and all those spaces. And so it is good. It's a really relevant place, and there are a lot of people that do become Christians because of the proximity effect as well. And so I'm never averse to the idea of a non-Christian getting involved in ministry, but I think there are certain limitations we need to be careful of as well.
That's another. It's another interesting problem to come across where something's growing so much in a local area, and so you end up with people in and outside of the church getting involved and helping run it and set it up, and so it's a really interesting thing to come across. And so, yeah, that's really interesting. So the question we've been asking today is where do we start when it comes to these communities, these rural churches? Where do they start in trying to grow and develop? And we've kind of said so far that what's needed is an assessment of what you can achieve, what resources you have. And we kind of grew that into what could be sustained as well, as another aspect of that. What, realistic and achievable was the two words you used. Really important, realistic and achievable. So, what else might be needed to take those first steps?
Yeah, I think it's then important to start building our mission around relationships. So we did some research. I've mentioned it previously ourselves, and what came out of the What's in Our Hands research from the Church of England is that relationships are absolutely central. Like mission grows out of connection, not just activity. Like putting something on because you think it would be helpful is all well and good, but putting something on because the community needs it and that there is a space for it and there are relationships that are pointing that way is far more acceptable to do. So I think the next point is to go, what does relationship look like? So coffee mornings, again, great. It's simple presence. You build trust over time. It doesn't look like much at first, but it's actually in those kind of spaces where relationships grow and people can then have those honest conversations.
Hmm.
Like, how do we create space in our mission to allow people to ask the big questions about life and faith and the meaning of it all? I don't think we do that naturally. So if we start to build our relationships, build our mission around those relationships and how we're going to have that journey, then again, that's a great place to start.
Yeah, relationships are so very important. So if you're going to do something in the rural community in the area around you, it's no good just sort of doing it in spite of the people there. You want to do it with the people there, so you're going to need those relationships to actually grow and develop and actually reach out and help those people. So it's a really, on one level, it seems like a rather obvious one, but actually we could so very easily forget it, sort of looking at the area, right, what do we need to do? But forgetting, well, there's loads of people here. Why don't we just sort of ask them or get involved in their lives and see what they need. So relationships a big part of where to start with this.
Yeah, and I forgive me, I may have shared it previously, but even so, you might be hearing it for the first time this morning as you're listening. But relationships are certainly key, especially if you're working in the sort of children's and youth sector in your community. So engaging your local school is not just about going to that school and going, how can I come in and talk about Jesus, which is a great thing, but actually it's more about the relationship with that school. Like head teachers want you to go and go, how can we serve you as a school? How can we build a relationship with you as a school? And I think I've mentioned it about the Pray, Bake, Read that Lichfield Diocese organised several years ago. It's probably 20 years ago now. But all that was around how do we build relationship in that school? We pray for the school. We let the school know we're praying for them. Maybe bake them a cake once a term, once a half term, every week. Send it into the staff room with a note like, we're praying for you. Like, builds relationship. They come to know that the church is generous, that the church is praying for, that the church is supporting them. And just that simple note of going, if you'd value prayer, email us or call us. I used to email the head teacher in my local school every week and just say, on behalf of the church, know that you are regularly being prayed for by us and by me. If there's anything we can be praying for. It didn't lead to me then going, how can I do X, Y, and Z? It was just, I want to build relationship and to share that you're being loved and supported and that we believe that prayer works and helps. And then the going into read to listeners. So pray, bake, read. Going into listen to children read is, I've got a 5-year-old myself. I love listening to him read in an evening. What greater way and connection could there be than going in regular to listen to children read? It serves the school, it serves that child, it builds relationship. And I think we so often think, how do we, again, it goes to our conversation last week, how do we get bums on seats? It's not. It's how do we build relationship and then bring Jesus into the midst of that relationship.
Yeah, that's what it's all about, relationships, ultimately. I think it's kind of like the core thing that's needed, and it's the core thing people are trying to get. But this is the core thing people can actually forget about, the importance of people that they're working with, that they're working for. It's kind of the crux of the matter almost, and it's so easily forgotten or lost or just put on the back burner almost. But those relationships with the local people in the community, in the area, it's kind of the bedrock of how you can grow, develop, and how you can get started on growing and developing your church and building and getting stronger.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess the next point for me would be is how do we learn from what is already working? Sometimes we try something once and it doesn't work that once, but if we give it a bit of time, it starts to work. And we need to learn from some of those things, learn from some of those strategies, uh, look what others are doing. I think every context is different, so there is no parachuting in of this will definitely work. But if you're in a benefice of 8 churches, what's working for one could potentially work for some of the others. What is really helpful, and the what's in our hands research from the Church of England, that was not just a theory-based research. It was real projects, real churches. It was looking what is actually working on the ground. And I think let's not throw those kind of ideas out. I think everything can be repurposed and reused and uh, can potentially have an impact, but it has to be, again, grounded in your relationship and then grounded in what is going to be achievable for you. But it's important to see what's already working and what could potentially work for us.
Mm. Looking at what others doing is actually going to be really helpful. And essentially, that's what we're doing here. We're giving some stories of what's worked in other churches, and I think we're going to at some point talk about what hasn't worked in churches as well. And we have definitely done that. So what works, what hasn't, hearing other people's stories, hearing what other people have done is another
Yeah.
aspect of it. But just because it's worked somewhere else doesn't mean it's going to work for you. So achievable, realistic, building up those relationships in the local community. These are all the things needed to make a good start, where to start answering that question, which is where we started this conversation. And so some really good, valuable stuff we've brought through already.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, and probably I've got another couple of points on this. I think don't measure success the wrong way is a good one, because I know in our last conversation last week, we talked about mission statistics and bums on seats and all those kind of things. And we can measure success based on somebody else's success measure.
Mm,
That success doesn't always look like big numbers. Success could be consistency. Success
yeah.
could be a strengthened relationship, renewed purpose. It might not look dramatic, but the reality is it could be a huge shift for your community, but you just can't quantify it by any normal means. Um, Faithfulness is the first sign of fruitfulness for me.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
so we need to not measure according to others. We need to measure according to what God is doing in our own community first and foremost.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. In any kind of marketing, if you started a coffee morning and you did it once, no one showed up, and then just stopped there and then, you could actually be preventing something that could have the potential to grow because people don't just jump at it the first time. They may hear about it a few times, and if it's being consistently done, that's when people can kind of warm in and come in. So it's used in any kind of marketing thing. You need to hear something 3 times in order to really hook onto it. So would that be an aspect of this, sort of consistently doing it?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think, and the more means that we can do it, and sometimes we expect that because we send out one email about something, everyone's just going to sign up and attend. Uh, I've recently seen another charity that I used to work for, and they've been pushing their fundraising thing probably every day for the last 4 weeks. Like it's been on their socials, it's been on emails, it's been in conversations, it's on the bottom of their emails when they send, like when you email someone personally in the organization. And it's like they get the idea that consistency, continuing to communicate it well, matters.
Yeah.
Because if we expect to tell people, oh, we're launching a messy church, and that's the only time they ever hear about it, they ain't going to come. But if we tell them on our socials, we tell them on our website, we tell them in person, we tell them by posters, we tell them by this means, we send it out through the school, then it's that re-engagement. Yeah. If I say KFC 3 times, it'll make me want one. It's that kind of mentality, isn't it?
Yeah, well, you might need to say that 3 times for me to want one, but
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. There's consistency needed for this kind of thing. So where the question of where to start? Well, we've talked about being realistic and being getting something that's achievable, but also it's about realizing that having one go at it isn't really enough. You've got to do it a number of times. You've got to be, as you talked about, that measure, not measuring by other people's what's worked for them, but having a different measure. If you've tried it once, that's not enough of a grounds for success. You've got to try it a number of times, and then you can kind of measure the success. And so, yeah, there's a number of different things for where to start. It's not a simple question, is it?
No, it's not. It's not. And that's why we exist as Rural
Yeah.
Missions, because we want to help journey with people on this. Like, and that brings me to my final point of support and encouragement matter. Like, if you're trying to do this in isolation on your own, you're going to struggle. If you're the only person batting for mission, it's going to feel hard pressed. And so, how do we start? Well, I think it's important to have a support network and people that share this with you, that can cheer you on, that can pray for you. And so, if nothing else, I'd encourage you find some people of peace around you to support you in what you're stepping into. That's how you might need to start, is to start finding some people of like minds. And if that's us, we'd love to journey with people on that, because support doesn't just help churches do more, it helps them become more. Like, we're not just about activity, we're about how do we get that heart, that head, that mindset change. And we can only do that if we find people that also have that same heart and mind and
Yeah.
head change.
Yeah, it's important that we have those people in place around us who can support us in any area of life. It's true. And it's also true in growing rural communities, in rural missions and stuff like that. So it's been really good to chat today and to discuss how exactly to get started on this growth and development. And as we've said, it's not as straightforward question as it might seem. There's quite a few moving parts to this. We've discussed all kinds of different aspects to it. And so it's been really good to chat about that, to explore this question. And I hope that we've done a pretty good job of answering that.
Yeah, I think this goes a long way to starting that, doesn't it? It's how do we do this together? How can we do what's achievable? How can we support and love and encourage one another? So thank you so much for letting me share once more. And as I said, if that struck a chord with anyone, you'd love some support, then do come and find us at Rural Missions. We'd love to journey with you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure as always. Look forward to chatting next week.
Thank you. See you next week.